Change announces itself softly, like the pale shift of morning light across a blackboard, long before anyone thinks to name it. I felt that shift on the first Saturday of winter break, when I volunteered to help Mr. Reyes catalog the school's antique instruments for an upcoming district exhibit. Technically, he was my history teacher, but the quiet hours I spent in his cluttered classroom after school had made him something more: mentor, confidant, quiet orbit for a restless planet like me. I arrived early, breath steaming in the cold corridor, and found the door already propped open. Inside, dust motes floated in angled sunlight, and Mr. Reyes, tweed blazer shed, shirt sleeves rolled, was kneeling by a long oak cabinet, coaxing a brass astrolabe from its velvet cradle. He looked up with that measured half-smile that always landed somewhere between welcome and guarded curiosity. "Morning, Jordan. Hope you like mysteries," he said, tilting the instrument so its aged metal caught the light. I answered too, brightly, aware of the heat that climbed my neck whenever his attention fixed on me. Always. Especially the kind that still work after 400 years. He chuckled, low and soft, and nodded toward a second table crowded with powder blue storage boxes. "Then you'll love today." We settled into an easy rhythm, he reading accession logs, me photographing each artifact. With no bell schedules or chattering hallways, the room felt suspended outside time. Every so often his shoulder brushed mine as we consulted the same inscription. Each accidental touch lingered a beat too long, like a secret neither of us was ready to voice. On the wall above us hung a sepia photograph of the school's founding faculty, their faces stern and orderly. Beside it, Mr. Reyes had pinned a Polaroid from last month's debate finals, where I stood mid-argument, hands flung wide, passion written all over me. I'd noticed that photo before, but today it pulsed with new meaning, proof that he saw me, even when I wasn't looking. Around noon, the custodians killed the main lights for maintenance, leaving us in a pool of window glow. Mr. Reyes set down an inkwell and flexed his fingers, ink staining the grooves of his wedding band-free hand. "Hungry?" he asked. I brought sandwiches. We ate cross-legged on the floor amid relics of centuries, the scent of rosemary bread mixing with the paper and chalk smell I'd come to associate with him. Our conversation drifted from medieval trade routes to favorite record albums, then, quietly, to my plans after graduation, a topic that usually knotted my stomach. But with him, I found myself speaking freely, about wanting to study anthropology, about fearing I'd never quite fit anywhere. He listened, head cocked, eyes the color of worn mahogany, and when I trailed off, he said, "You have an instinct for stories, Jordan. Places are lucky to hold you, even briefly." The words settled over me like a hand resting between my shoulder blades, steady, reassuring, intimate. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close we sat, knees almost touching, his tie loosened, a smudge of ink at the corner of his mouth. My pulse drummed loud enough to drown the distant hum of the boilers. Outside, the sky shifted toward late afternoon gold. Shadows stretched across desks, connecting us in a long, narrow triangle of shared light. I pretended to study a cracked sextant, but my gaze kept returning to the ink on his skin. I wanted, absurdly, to wipe it away with my thumb, to feel the warmth of his jaw, to know whether this impossible curiosity was visible on my face. He cleared his throat. "There's one more cabinet downstairs in storage," he said, voice just above a whisper. "I could use another pair of hands if you're not in a hurry." I wasn't. In fact, I'd never felt less hurried in my life. As he rose and offered me his hand, a teacher's gesture, formal yet tender, the future tilted, subtle as that first shift of morning light, and I knew the day would end differently from how it began. Mr. Reyes hadn't always been Mr. Reyes to me. He was just the quiet guy in room 207 during my freshman year. Mysterious, untouchable, all tweed and vinyl records and sharp, knowing eyes. Sophomore year, I signed up for his world history. Elective mostly out of curiosity. But I stayed because he taught history like it was personal, like it lived in the bones of people, not textbooks. He had this way of asking questions that made you feel like your answers mattered. When I mentioned once that my dad used to build scale models of Civil War forts, he didn't just nod and move on. The next week, he brought in a replica Union officer's insignia and said, "Thought your dad might appreciate this." Like, He'd been thinking about my life beyond the classroom. It started small, staying after class to help return books to the shelves, asking him questions about old maps, then offering to help digitize some of the collection when I found out he was working late. He never treated me like a kid. He challenged me, teased me, even trusted me with pieces of the past that were older than the school itself. Somewhere in the middle of all that, a rhythm formed, effortless and strange and safe that I wasn't sure what to call it. Friendship didn't seem right. It was quieter than that. Sharper, too. That Saturday, after the sandwiches and the antique cataloging, we descended the back stairwell into the school's basement archives. The hallway buzzed faintly with fluorescent lights, casting long shadows between metal storage cabinets and half-unpacked display crates. Mr. Reyes reached into his pocket and tossed me a key on a lanyard with the school's logo. "Officially deputizing you," he said. "Archivist in training." I grinned and bowed dramatically. "Do I get a badge?" "You get to carry a 100-year-old cello up the stairs," he replied dryly. But there was a hint of amusement in his voice that made my chest glow. We worked side by side in that chilly undercroft, joking about which artifacts might be cursed or haunted. He told me about the time a student accidentally broke a replica musket and tried to glue it back together with toothpaste. I told him about the time I dressed as Caesar for Halloween and tripped over my own bedsheet toga in the cafeteria. Air between us was easy, familiar, but laced with something unspoken. Our hands brushed more often now, reaching for the same items or turning pages in the fragile inventory ledger. Each time, my skin tingled where we touched, and I could feel myself tensing, hoping he didn't notice how much I noticed. And then came the complication. The cello case was heavier than it looked, and as we maneuvered it toward the stairs, the school's aging boiler system let out a long metallic groan, followed by a loud clunk. The lights flickered once, then darkness. I froze. "Is that normal?" Mr. Reyes gave a resigned sigh in the dark. "The breakers down here are temperamental. Custodians usually fix it, but they're off today." Flashlights in the supply closet. I heard shuffling, the jingle of keys, then silence. "That is, if I hadn't left the key upstairs," he said after a beat. I laughed softly, nervously. "So we're locked in?" "Not exactly," he said, voice closer now. "But we'll be navigating by touch until we get back upstairs." We stood still for a second, just breathing in the darkness. "All right," he said gently, "hand." I raised mine, and his fingers found me. Warm, steady, his grip folding around mine like a current. We moved slowly, shoulder to shoulder, me holding the cello awkwardly while he guided us with confident steps. The hall seemed longer now. Each step rang louder. His hand never let go. "This is how horror movies start," I whispered. He chuckled. "And yet, I don't hear dramatic music." We finally reached the stairwell, where the emergency light flickered dimly. At the top, faint daylight filtered through the frosted window. I set the cello down with a thud and turned to him, still catching my breath. "You okay?" he asked, brushing dust from his sleeve. "Yeah, just not used to holding hands with teachers in pitch-black basements," I said, trying to make it a joke, but the words hung there. His eyes flicked to mine. Then, quietly, carefully, he smiled. "Neither am I." Something shifted again. Not loudly, not with any fanfare, but like a gear slotting into place that we didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. He handed me a thermos from his bag as we settled in the upstairs reading alcove, pretending the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. But my fingers still remembered the shape of his. My heartbeat hadn't slowed. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of half-meant glances and shared silences. At one point, we both reached for the same cracked globe, our hands meeting again. This time, neither of us moved away. He didn't say anything, but his thumb brushed mine as he took the globe. Just once, barely a touch. Still, it was enough to make the room feel smaller, warmer, uncertain in a way that made my chest ache. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the image that returned to me wasn't the flicker of emergency lights or the smell of dust and parchment. It was his hand, how easily mine had fit inside it, and how, in that moment, I hadn't wanted to let go. The following Saturday, Mr. Reyes asked if I could accompany him to the county museum to drop off several fragile pieces for the exhibit. I tried to sound casual when I said yes, but my pulse leapt at the thought of 2 uninterrupted hours alone. With him, one there, one back. His little hatchback smelled faintly of cedar polish and coffee grounds. The console was clutter-free except for a battered cassette adapter and a pencil wedged behind the gearshift. As he merged onto the highway, he glanced over, brow raised. "You're awfully quiet for someone who usually narrates every mile marker." I forced a grin, saving my commentary for the museum. Traffic hummed by, winter sunlight flashing off windshields. I watched the way his fingers drummed the steering wheel during guitar solos, how he pushed his glasses up when they slipped, how his profile tensed whenever an 18-wheeler thundered past. Little, ordinary observations, yet each felt loaded now, cataloged against my will. Halfway there, a sudden metallic thunk jolted the car. The steering wheel kicked sideways. Mr. Reyes cursed under his breath and eased us to the shoulder. Gravel crackled beneath the tires. The vehicle listed sharply. "Flat," he muttered after stepping out. Moments later, he opened my door. "Spares useless. Treads down to fabric." His smile was apologetic but oddly calm. "Tow truck's an hour out. Battery on my phone's dead. Figures. Can I borrow yours?" "No signal," I said, holding up the screen, searching. The highway curved between low hills here, a notorious dead zone. He exhaled, studied the sky, pale, cloudless, and nodded toward a rest area a quarter-mile back. "There's a maintenance depot. Landline inside. We can wait there, out of the cold." We carried the most fragile display cases between us, 2 lacquered vials wrapped in quilts, then trudged along the shoulder. Wind cut through my jacket, making my teeth chatter, but I hardly felt it. His elbow brushed mine each time the path narrowed. Every contact sparked hot and guilty beneath my skin. The depot was little more than a cinder block room attached to vending machines and a single locked washroom. Inside, fluorescent light hummed overhead, reflecting off dull linoleum. A battered sofa sat against one wall, its cushions sagging like an exhausted beast. He called the tow service, relayed our mile marker, then folded himself onto the sofa with a sigh. 45 minutes, minimum. His voice echoed in the empty space. I set the instrument cases on a table and paced, trying to burn nervous energy. Silence pulled thickly. Eventually, he patted the spot beside him. "You're shivering, Jordan. Sit." I did, careful to leave an inch between us. Still, the sofa dipped toward him, erasing most of that space. He shrugged out of his wool coat and draped it over my shoulders without asking. The fabric was warm, carrying a subtle scent of bergamot and chalk dust. "Better?" he asked. I nodded, throat tight. His kindness felt dangerous, too easy to read as something more. But then his knee bumped mine, lingered. Not accidental. Or was it? To distract myself, I gestured toward the taped-shut violin vaults. Imagine if centuries of music survived wars and fires, only to end up in a roadside depot, because your teacher can't change a tire. He chuckled, nudging my knee again. "Spare me the guilt trip." "Not guilt, comic irony," says the future anthropologist. The banter helped, yet every joke skimmed a deeper current. He leaned back, arm along the sofa's ridge. His fingers dangled inches from my shoulder, casual yet unbearably present. That I cleared my throat. "You ever think about the people who built those instruments? How they never imagined 2 strangers would ferry them around in a hatchback centuries later?" "Strangers?" he echoed, eyes narrowing slightly. Heat flooded my cheeks. "I mean, custodians of history, not strangers." A pause. His gaze held mine, softening. "Jordan, I don't think of you as a stranger." The words settled between us like dust motes caught in lamplight. Weightless but visible, spinning, impossible to ignore. My heartbeat hammered. I looked away, pretending to study the vending machine options. Stale crackers, off-brand soda, neon candy that would taste like regret. "Say something," my mind begged. But every sentence felt treacherous, too revealing, too irreversible. I stayed silent. He shifted, foot tapping restlessly, then pulled a thermos from his satchel and poured coffee into the lid cup. "Here. It's lukewarm, but better than nothing." Our fingers brushed as he passed it. "Electricity." I sipped, tasting both coffee and steel. The cup shook slightly. He noticed and steadied my hand, thumbs circling my knuckle before retreating. "Cold," he murmured, but his voice had thinned, as though he doubted his own excuse. I tried to offer the cup back. "You need some?" He shook his head. "I'm warm enough." "I'm not." I almost said, "Not from temperature anyway." The urge to close the final inches between us pressed like a hand against my back. I imagined turning, confessing everything. The nights I'd replayed our conversations, the ache of wanting his approval to mean something else. I imagined him recoiling, reminding me of boundaries, of rules I already knew. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the coffee's surface, distorted, uncertain. You ever worry that history repeats because people never say what matters until it's too late? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He studied me. I worry about that all the time. Another silence, deeper this time, humming with possibilities. His hand rose, as though to brush a stray curl from my forehead, then hesitated midair and dropped to his lap. The aborted gesture hit me harder than any touch could have. Outside, a semi rumbled past, rattling the aluminum siding. I flinched. He did too. And in that microsecond of shared startle, our shoulders pressed together. Neither of us moved away. The tow truck ETA still read 30 minutes. 30 minutes felt simultaneously too short and infinite. I inhaled the scent of his coat, felt his breath hitch where it grazed my hairline, and wondered if he sensed my internal tremor. Probably. He noticed everything. At last he cleared his throat. Tell me something no one else knows about you. His tone was light, but the question opened a door I wasn't sure I could close again. I swallowed. When I was 12, I started keeping field notes on people the way Dad did with forts, sketches, habits, timelines. It made me feel less adrift. Do you still? Sometimes. I risked a glance. You're in them. He blinked, a slow recognition spreading across his face, part surprise, part something warmer. Am I annotated kindly? Meticulously. I answered, my voice cracking on the word. He smiled, small and unguarded, and the room seemed to tilt. Then he reached over, not dramatically, not like a movie, but simply laid his hand over mine on the coffee cup. His palm was steady. Mine trembled. Thank you, he said. Simple, sincere. For what? Trusting him? Admitting his significance? I couldn't ask. My throat was a knot. Yet his thumb began to trace soothing circles on the back of my hand, each pass erasing a layer of fear, etching possibility instead. Outside, gravel crunched, the tow truck at last. We rose, reluctant, his fingers leaving mine slowly, as though memorizing the parting. The crisis resolved in minutes. Car hoisted, spare replaced, receipt signed. But something larger remained unresolved, humming like a plucked string between us. As we climbed back into the hatchback, I caught my reflection in the window, eyes wide, lips parted, and thought, this is the point of no return. He shut his door, exhaled, and for a heartbeat we sat in silence, the car warming around us. Then he looked over, voice gentle, earnest. We'll talk, Jordan. Soon. My pulse answered, yes before my mouth could. And as he pulled onto the highway, evening lights spilling across the dashboard, I realized talking was inevitable now, because silence could no longer contain what had started to bloom in that little cinder block room. The semester ended with a hush rather than a cheer, students scattering for winter break, lockers slamming shut like punctuation. I stayed late that last day, helping Mr. Reyes install the final placards for the district exhibit in the libraries. Glass rotunda. Outside, twilight bled into the hills. Inside, lamplight glimmered off brass compasses and parchment maps like secret constellations that we worked almost wordlessly. Every time I lifted a display lid, I felt his gaze settle on me, steady, unreadable. Every time he adjusted a spotlight, I caught myself staring at the soft line of his jaw. The silence was charged, as though the entire building leaned in to eavesdrop. When the last plaque clicked into place, he exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath all week. That's it, he murmured. Ready for the public. Looks perfect, I said as he checked his watch. Custodian locks the wing in 15 minutes. We should grab our coats. Neither of us moved. Finally, he broke the spell. Come on, one quick walkthrough. He flicked off the overhead fluorescents, leaving only the display lights. Golden pools glowed beneath our feet. We strolled the perimeter, our footsteps muffled by carpet, our reflections gliding side by side in the glass cases, halfway around. He stopped at the astrolabe, the first artifact we'd handled together. Funny, he said softly, how an object meant to measure the heavens can mark time on the ground, too. His finger traced its rim. This year felt different. My pulse quickened. Different how? He opened his mouth, then shut it. Let's sit, he said instead, gesturing to the reading nook by the south window, a semicircle of leather chairs facing the campus quad. Outside, sodium lamps cast long shadows of bare sycamores across snow-dusted grass. The world looked. Paused. Waiting. We sat angled toward each other, knees almost touching. Somewhere a clock chimed 6. He rubbed his palms together, like warming courage. Jordan, he began. After the flat tire last week, I said we'd talk. I haven't stopped writing drafts in my head. He huffed a laugh. Turns out none of them sound remotely professional. The word professional landed like a boundary stone. I felt myself shrink, preparing for a gentle letdown. But his eyes were soft, not stern. I'm your student, I said, filling the silence so it couldn't fill me. For 3 more months, he acknowledged. And that matters. But it's not the only thing that matters. A current rippled through me, hope wrestling fear. What else matters? He inhaled, gaze flicking to the dark quad, then back. That I care about you. Not just as a mentee or the kid who saves my exhibits. A shaky breath. I find myself wondering how your debate season's going, if you're eating breakfast. Whether you're happy. I drive past the record store you like and think, Jordan would love that Miles Davis pressing in the window. He gave a rueful smile. I used to be good at keeping school walls high. With you, they've never stayed up. Heat flushed my face, throat constricting with a dozen unsaid replies. I managed only. I think about you too. My voice cracked, but the truth felt solid once spoken. All the time, actually, which is terrifying because I don't know where the line is or if I've already crossed it. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. You haven't done anything wrong. Neither have you, I said quickly, shocking myself with the conviction in my tone. But feelings don't. Check rulebooks before showing up. A brittle laugh escaped him. If only. Then his hand slid from his knee, moved palm up between us, inviting but not insisting. Tell me what you feel. I can't guess anymore. My heart pounded so hard it blurred sound. I stared at his hand, at the faint ink still lodged in one cuticle, at the small mosquito bite scar near his thumb, and placed mine inside it. Warmth flared up my arm. Words followed, tumbling, unstoppable. I feel like every conversation with you is a room I never want to leave, I said, voice trembling but clear. Like you see past the noise in my head to the part that actually wants something real. When you laugh at my bad puns, it's the best kind of victory. When you compliment my essays, I read the lines over until the paper practically dissolves. I swallowed. I don't know what any of that means long term, but I know being near you makes sense in a way nothing else does. His fingers tightened, eyes shining with something raw. Thank you, he whispered. I've been so afraid of misreading. You're not. I squeezed back, then faltered. But it scares me, wanting this. Wanting you. I don't want to complicate your life or ruin the way you look at me. You could never ruin that, he said instantly, voice breaking. He freed one hand to rub his brow. What frightens me is power. I'm your teacher. You're almost 18, but almost isn't enough for safety. He looked up. Yet if I wait until June to say anything, I'm lying by omission. And I've never wanted to lie to you. I'd rather wait and be honest, I said. Even if it kills me. His laugh cracked into something like a sob. Same. For a long beat we sat in shared, ache-filled silence. The confession made. The future uncertain, but the air finally honest. My thumb traced circles over the back of his hand, memorizing texture. The ridge of a vein, the faint roughness where chalk dried his skin that he inhaled, as if steadying courage. May I? He gestured vaguely, then stopped, cheeks flushing. The vulnerability in that half gesture shattered the last of my restraint. I nodded, pulse sprinting. He reached up, fingertips, grazing my cheekbone, featherlight. My eyelids fluttered. His hand trembled, then steadied, thumb brushing a path to my jaw. I exhaled a shaky breath I'd been holding all year. Is this okay? He murmured. Yes. I breathed, closing the inch between us. Our foreheads touched. First, an almost kiss, a testing of borders. I felt his glasses press cool against my temple, his exhale mingling with mine. Then, gently, he tilted his head and our lips met in a kiss so tentative it was more question than answer. The world contracted to a single point. Warm lips, the faint taste of coffee, the soft gasp he made when I kissed back. Lightning didn't crack and angels didn't sing. Instead, a quiet rightness flooded my chest, like puzzle pieces finally aligned. We parted after a heartbeat, maybe two, still close enough to feel each other's smiles. He brushed a curl from my forehead. I've wanted to do that since you corrected my pronunciation of Tokugawa sophomore year. I laughed, lightheaded. I've wanted it since you let me alphabetize your vinyl and didn't correct me when I put Bowie before Beatles, just raised an eyebrow and said, bold choice. He grinned, then sobered. We need boundaries. No more until after graduation. Emails only about class. No rumors. He lifted my hand, pressed a kiss to my knuckles. But know that I'm here, waiting. I can handle waiting, I said, surprising myself with how certain it felt that we sat back, still holding hands, watching snow begin to fall beyond the window, silent, gentle flakes swirling under the lamplight. In that moment I understood. Pauses can be promises. The wait itself could be sacred. The custodian's keys jingled down the hall. We stood quickly, straightening jackets, smoothing hair, transforming back into teacher and student. But something new glowed between us, invisible, yet undeniable. The door. He paused, voice low. Walk out first. I'll lock up. Then, softer, good night, Jordan. I stepped into the corridor, heart buoyant, cheeks aching from smiling. Good night, Adrian, I whispered, his first name tasting daring and perfect, behind me. The library lights dimmed, the exhibit sleeping until morning. Ahead, the hallway stretched long and bright, each step echoing a promise. 3 months, then the world. The next morning I woke to a single new email, subject line, omission is a form of dishonesty. Even before I opened it, my pulse skittered. From A. Reyes to Jordan Harris, 8:13 a.m. I misspelled Beatles on purpose. Needed an excuse to keep you around the record crate. Nice to know the ruse worked. Hey, asterisk. I laughed into my pillow, cheeks scorching. Under the desk lamp's glow, I typed back. You sacrificed British rock orthodoxy just to talk to me? Reckless. His reply came minutes later. History favors the bold. And just like that, our ordinary correspondence evolved. We still discussed unit plans and research notes, but between citations bloomed a secret tether, little jokes, half-coded compliments, gifts of astrolabes spinning in galaxies of glitter. Nothing explicit, nothing that could hang either of us, yet every ping felt like a hand pressed briefly to my chest. At school we played a deliberate game of distance. In class he called me Mr. Harris with extra syllables of formality. I raised my hand instead of blurting comments. Yet the air seemed warmer, charged with the knowledge of Thursday night. Once, passing in the hallway, our shoulders brushed, an accident that lingered like perfume the rest of the day. The following Saturday, he suggested we meet at the Botanical Conservatory downtown. Public enough to be innocent, secluded enough to breathe. I arrived first, pacing the glass atrium where winter orchids blazed like trapped sunsets. When he appeared, scarf crooked, snow dusting his hair, my grin was instantaneous. Your field notes running out of pages yet, he teased, falling into step beside me. Had to start a new volume, I murmured. Specimen Reyes won't stop exhibiting unexpected behaviors. He shot me a look both scandalized and delighted. We wandered gravel paths, pausing whenever a docent or stroller-pushing parent passed, resuming quietly when we were alone again amid palm frond shadows. Every so often his hand hovered near mine, never quite touching. Anticipation coiled inside me like spring steel. In the fern grotto, hidden from main walkways, he finally caught my wrist and tugged me behind a fragrant wall of foliage. Light modeled his face in greens and golds. Is this okay? He asked. My answer was to lace our fingers. Relief softened his shoulders. He squeezed once, then let our joined hands swing gently between us. We talked, really talked, about everything. The kiss had interrupted. He confessed he'd spent years building strict partitions between life and work after a messy divorce early in his career. Then you sat in the front row with that ridiculous trilobite lapel pin, he said, smiling at the memory. Partitions cracked. I admitted I'd feared my feelings were just misplaced hero worship, but they only got stronger the more. I saw you outside lecturing, singing along to Bowie off-key while cataloging ship logs, geeking out over fountain pen ink blends. You're whole. His eyes shone. So are you. That scares me sometimes. How completely you feel everything. We fell quiet, the hum of greenhouse heaters filling the space. Finally, he asked, "What does waiting look like for you?" I considered. Finishing senior year without giving the gossip vultures breadcrumbs. Applying for the archaeology internship, maybe staying local for undergrad. And us. Emails, occasional walks, recorded history podcasts we can argue about. Then, after graduation, my throat constricted with hope. We'll see. He traced the inside of my wrist with his thumb, thoughtful. After graduation, I'm slated to chaperone the summer study trip to Mesa Verde. They need a student intern. His smile curved, tentative. Are you bribing me with cliff dwellings? Merely presenting opportunities. I laughed half, dizzy with imagining red rock sunsets and stolen moments on observation decks. The future felt fragile but real, a map unfolding one cautious inch at a time. A tour group's chatter drifted closer. We stepped apart, but he brushed an invisible speck from my collar, an intimacy louder than any embrace. As we rejoined the main path, he leaned close enough that his whisper stirred my hair. Every date on the calendar is suddenly interesting because it's bringing me closer to June. I spent the next week floating. Even mundane tasks, shoveling the driveway, annotating Macbeth, hummed with the promise threaded through our days. At school, when classmates complained about essay prompts, I defended them too vigorously and bit back a smile realizing why. Yet not everything was buoyant. One afternoon, Mom found me staring into the fridge and asked if I was seeing someone. The question arrowed straight through my guard. I mumbled about focusing on college applications and fled upstairs, guilt prickling. Secrets were necessary, but they weighed heavier at home. That evening, I drafted a long email. How do we keep from hurting the people who love us? He responded, by trusting they'll cheer once they know the whole story. Meanwhile, protect the story. His faith steadied me. 2 days before Christmas break, snow canceled classes. I used the storm as cover to walk to the library, where he was finalizing exam grades. We met in the history stacks, both pretending surprise. Between towering shelves, we exchanged wrapped gifts. Mine, a first edition booklet on maritime trade routes. His, a pen set with ink the exact shade of antique parchment. Write me letters, he said softly, even if we never send them. I promised I would. As the building's heaters clicked on, an unexpected lull arose. No footsteps, no intercom. Just our breaths mingling in the dust-speckled afternoon light. He lifted my chin with 2 fingers, searching my face. "Jordan, may I kiss you?" My answer was a smile he learned mouth to mouth a second later. The kiss was firmer than the first, sure but still careful, hands curved at safe places, his on my shoulders, mine against the knot of his scarf. We separated only when the elevator dinged somewhere beyond the stacks. He pressed his forehead to mine. "We'll weather this." "We already are," I whispered, heart thundering. Outside, the world lay quiet beneath fresh snow, no storm. Inside me now, only a widening path toward whatever waited next. And for the first time, I believed waiting could be its own kind of closeness, measured not in distance but in promise, recorded like margins notes on the history we were daring to write together. Graduation came with little warning. One day I was lost in final essays and attendance sheets. The next I was standing in a pressed navy gown on the school's back lawn, listening to speeches I wouldn't remember under a sky I would never forget. The air buzzed with anticipation, with hugs and photographs, with future-bound declarations scribbled on mortarboards in glitter and Sharpie. But I wasn't watching the stage. I was watching the edge of the staff seating section, where Mr. Reyes, Adrian now, in my head at least, stood with his hands behind his back, stone still, pretending to scan the crowd like any other teacher. Except when his gaze finally found mine, it lingered. Just a second too long. Just enough. That was all we had promised until this point. Eye contact, a silence full of meaning. But that afternoon, things began to change. After the ceremony, while classmates surged toward their families, I slipped away behind the auditorium where the breeze was softer and the voices muted. I didn't wait long that he appeared from around the side of the brick wall, his suit jacket slung casually over one shoulder. "Congratulations, Mr. Harris," he said, stopping a few feet away. I smiled. "I'm officially a free agent." "You are," he said, and for the first time his smile didn't try to hide anything. "So what's next for this free agent?" I was thinking, I shrugged. I might write a few more field notes. Maybe about a man who pretends to hate Bowie, but secretly owns 3 albums. He snorted. 4. But one's a remix compilation, so it barely counts. We stood in the shadow of the old building, the sounds of celebration muffled behind us, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the silence. It didn't feel like something to fill. It felt like something we'd earned. So, I said, this is it. No more rules. He nodded slowly, his expression shifting from amusement to something more tender. That's the strange part. I've spent months walking the tightrope, every word weighed, every look calculated. And now, with the rope gone, I'm just standing here. Me too, I said. But I don't want to run. I want to walk forward. With you. There was a pause. A quiet, beautiful pause. Then he stepped closer, closed the space between us, and held out his hand. Not dramatic, not possessive, just opened. I took it. The warmth of his palm against mine grounded me more than any diploma ever could. I don't know what this becomes, he said. I don't have a script. I've never done this right before. We'll figure it out, I said. 1 page at a time. He smiled, really smiled this time, and pulled something from his jacket pocket. A folded piece of paper, carefully, creased, worn at the edges. I started this in December, he said. It's a letter. For you. I never sent it because I didn't know when it would be safe. I unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Neat, careful, a bit slanted, like it leaned toward me. The first line read, Dear Jordan, if you're reading this, it means the future is finally allowed to begin. My throat tightened. I'll finish it later, he said, eyes shining a little. But for now, I just want to walk with you. So, we walked, not far, just through the gravel lot where the faculty parked, past the elm trees that lined the west lawn, into the little neighborhood behind the school where birds flitted between mailbox flags. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. Each step felt like punctuation, marking the end of one story and the start of another. At the corner where the sidewalk curved toward the city trailhead, he paused, reached into his other pocket, and handed me a key. To the storage closet in the history wing, he said, grinning. Thought you should be the one to label the last of the artifacts. I turned the key over in my hand. It was small, unremarkable, but the message was clear that we weren't just something that happened behind glass, in hidden rooms, or between pages. We were a new exhibit in progress, unlabeled, evolving, messy, beautiful. When we reached the trail, I stopped walking. The sky was turning gold, the kind of light that made everything, his smile, his profile, the space between us, look like it belonged in a movie. I don't know where this leads, I said. I don't either, he replied, brushing his thumb over the back of my hand. But wherever it goes, I want to be there. We stood there, in the golden stillness, no longer teacher and student. Just 2 people who had found each other in the spaces between words, and for the first time. In months, maybe longer, I wasn't afraid of what came next, that I was looking forward to it.